Hi, and welcome to Act on Mental Health. If you're new here, my name is Sean Hardy, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Now, whether you're a parent, you work with kids in the classroom, or you see them as a school counselor for 30 minutes, or you're a therapist like me and you have kids as young as 8 years old on your caseload, you're probably looking for some ideas that can help your child learn how to handle their big emotions. And so this is what this video is for. And so hopefully one of these 15 ideas will be just for you and something you can utilize. I do want to preface that even though these are easy to teach, these are not necessarily going to be easy to implement. You need to practice these skills over and over and over again. And so I would suggest utilizing some of these activities that are within these skills over and over with the child so that they begin to take on and learn the basic skills that they need for self-regulation. Now, I want to go much more deeper into this, but I have another video that really goes into depth with these 3 micro skills of noticing, naming, and taming. And so you can watch this video here. Let's go ahead and get into it. So with self-regulation, we're trying to teach 3 skills: noticing, naming, and taming. Now, obviously we want the taming, we want that sooner rather than later, but really need the noticing and naming first. And so these are ones that I work directly with the client, as well as maybe their parent or sibling, whoever's in the room. I figure if you're in the room, then you're saying you want to be a part of therapy. So you can utilize these with that in mind. Now, noticing activities are built around the 5 senses. So usually I'll choose one of the senses to work on for that session. Now, the first one is a sight exercise, and that is picture viewing. Now, I use a painting in my office that I'll have a client stand about 3 or 4 feet away and look at for 30 seconds. And then I'll have them turn around towards me and recall 5 things that they remember that describe the painting. And so it's kind of interesting what they'll pick out. Once that's done, I'll have them turn back around and I'll start to point out other things that they may have missed, or maybe some other things in addition. So you can use a painting or picture on the wall, as well as a painting or picture on your laptop. But that's the basic idea. 30 seconds of viewing, turn them around, have them describe 5 things, and then review with them some things that were also in there that they may have missed. The second game is one of the favorites that kids have and they request to have again. It's called the hidden alarm. So I use my phone for this, and I'll go in to the stopwatch setting and I'll change the volume of the alarm. And so I'll set it for about 15 seconds and have the kid actually exit the room with their parent. And then I'll hide my phone somewhere in the room, not too hard, but somewhere where they'll be able to locate it eventually. And then I'll set the alarm for 15 seconds, go get them, have them come in. By that time, the alarm will start to sound. And it's really interesting to watch kids try to locate it with just using their hearing. Sometimes they'll be really loud about it and they'll have to realize that they'll have to get really quiet. And then they'll start to learn how to pay attention to the sounds around them. And if they do it successfully, we'll do it again. I'll go just a slightly lower volume until where it'll get to the lowest setting. This also builds kids' confidence. They really feel really good about themselves. And what they don't know, that adults maybe know, is that they're hearing way more decibels than an adult can. We lose a lot of our hearing as we age. And so kids actually are really good at this. And it's something that I find that they request again. Next is the touch and describe. Now for this activity, I usually have the parent choose 5 of my fidget spinners or 5 objects that are roughly their hand in size. So you can pick some toys or some just random objects that you have in your office or nearby, and you'll put them in a basket or a bowl and just have something covering it. So I use a blanket in my office and cover a basket, and I'll have that kid reach under the blanket and into the basket, and I'll have them choose an object to put in their hand and then begin to feel around with it with just using their sense of touch and try to describe for me what they're feeling. So sometimes I'll ask questions if they're having trouble, like, is it heavy? Is it light? How big is it? Is it as big as your hand, smaller? What shapes does it have? Or maybe what texture, what material is it made of? And you begin to help them to describe what they're feeling. And that has use later on in sessions. Next is something I call the slow walk. And so this is something I recommend in school if a kid is really highly emotional, or at home, maybe they're dysregulated. This is really something that comes in handy. What I'll have the kid stand up and go by the door. If they're young, like around 8 years old, sometimes they need a parent to stand with them and do the activity with them. So I'll have them start out by the door and then begin to slowly walk, kind of like they're an elderly person that is walking very slowly. So maybe I'll have them slow it down even more if they're going too fast. And I'll have them walk about 10 to 12 paces, just enough to where they get the sense of walking slow. I also highlight that to pay attention to the bottoms of their feet. So sometimes before they start, I'll have them wiggle their feet or wiggle their toes and maybe feel the balls of their feet and kind of go back and forth. This really helps them to get into the sensory of their feet and walk slowly. Now, kids don't really like this activity, but what they need to understand is to slowing down their body and how that can actually help regulate that emotional intensity that they're having. And so I do recommend doing this maybe twice, 3 times to help them to get the basic idea of they can slow themselves down and feel differently. The next one that I teach is something called the 5-4-3-1 method. So what I'll do is I'll have the kid draw out their hand. So you can do this on a whiteboard or you can do this on a piece of paper. And then I'll ask them if I can trace their hand, if they're okay with that. So once I trace their hand, I'll have them label it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'll have them draw an icon for each of their senses. So maybe like an eyeball for the sight, an ear for hearing, tongue for taste, and so forth. Once they've done that, I'll have them sit back down and we'll walk through 5 items that they can see in the room, and I'll have them call those out. 4 things that they can touch. So maybe around them, they'll touch things and call those out. 3 things that they can hear. So sometimes it's just the air conditioner, and maybe I'll encourage them as I'm talking, what else do you hear? Oh, I hear your voice. Oh, I hear my voice. So do that. And then 2 would be sense of smell. And so they can kind of maybe smell their shirt, smell their hand. And the last one is taste. For that one, maybe tasting their shirt. Or they have a pen or something like that. They always get a kick out of that one. I say, just don't taste me or don't taste your parent. The next set of activities are naming skills. And so for these, I'm trying to get the kid good at naming and communicating their emotions and things to other people. And so the first one you can buy on Amazon, or you could probably just make this game. It's called Kids on Stage, and it has a little spinner with different colors that correlate to the different cards that they can pick. And there's actions, animal sounds, and objects. And so like going fishing would be like an action. So the kid will have a card, and maybe it says umbrella. And so they have to try to act out whatever that might be, and the other people in the room have to try to guess. If they guess correctly, then they get the card, and whoever has the most cards, I usually go up to 5, they win the game. So once we've completed that, something extra that I like to do that they have a lot of fun with is I do a little improv. So I say the winner gets a special prize at the end. And so once the game is ended, I say your special prize is you get to come up with a 1-minute story using all of your cards. And so it's a lot of fun because sometimes the kid will win and they'll have to come up with a game. Sometimes a parent or myself will win and we'll come up with a really creative story. The next game is called a color cube. And this is something that you can buy, but this is also something you probably just make with colored paper. But these have 6 different colors, and these all will correlate with the 6 core emotions that I'll describe a little later. In this game, there is some cards that go with it. And so when they get a card, it correlates with a certain thing that they have to do or a certain thing that they have to guess. And so it's a lot of fun for the kids. One of them is yellow, and yellow is all the facial expressions. And so you have to guess maybe a sad face or tired face, happy face. And so with that one, I like to do it where they hold up the card to their forehead, and other people have to make the facial expression, and they have to guess what emotion that might be. And so for younger kids, this can be especially good because they have to name and connect what an emotion is with a facial expression. And sometimes that can be something that's lacking with kids that have trouble regulating their big emotions. The next one is called Ping Pong Toss. Now, this is a game that I made. Actually, my wife made it. I should give her credit. But they're just little cups. And then I have a little backboard that's cut out with like cardstock paper. And then I color in the backboard with a certain color that correlates with a primary emotion. And so this is really helpful to back up a story that I usually go through that I'll share in the next series of activities. And so these are the 6 primary emotions. And what I'll have is I'll have a kid at the other end of the table, and then I'll have the cups or the baskets on the other side. And then they have to try to bounce the ping pong into the basket. And when they do, I just ask the simple question of, when was a time this past week when you felt sad, if they make it in the blue one? Or what was a time this week when you felt angry, which would be the red one, or happy, which would be the yellow, and so forth. And so if a kid can't remember or recall a time when they felt that, I'll just ask, what makes you feel, or what are some things that make you feel sad? And usually it gets a kid talking about some emotion. It also is good for the assessment part, because if they're really having trouble with sadness, maybe that dysregulates them even more. That's good information to know. Maybe they might avoid, some emotions and really enjoy other emotions. The next one is called Backtack Drawing, and this is one that you can find on Therapist Aid website. So I have the resource in the description below. But this is also something that you can make a variation of. And so the way it works is you have a speaker and a listener. So the listener is going to be facing a blank piece of paper or a whiteboard, and they're going to be the person drawing. The speaker is going to be facing away from them, and they will have a page with a random drawing of different objects. So maybe a square, triangle, lines, circle. Some of them are colored in, some of them aren't. Or you could give them, an object or an animal, like draw a cat, whatever. It could be whatever you want it to be, but that's usually what the speaker will be trying to describe without saying exactly what it is or showing what it is. Once they're done, I have them switch. And so the child gets an opportunity to be both the speaker and the listener, as well as the parent. This is really good because afterwards, when you reveal what the drawing actually was and what they tried to draw, you can see that there's a mismatch. And so we really highlight the importance of communication and how we can make assumptions and how sometimes we can get things wrong because we're not really listening and asking questions. Now for this activity, I don't let the listener ask any questions. I just have them purely listen just so they can get really into that role. So that's a good one, I think, for both parents and children to try to learn how to communicate better. The next one is also a drawing activity. It's called the Complete the Scene activity. And this is one that I've recently been using, and I've been finding it's a lot of fun. And so what I do is I have a whiteboard, but you can use a piece of paper and just draw a line and write down the half of it. And then on one half, I tell the drawer, which I start with the kid and say, okay, I want you to draw an animal. And they get to pick whatever animal that they want, but they can only draw half of its body or half of its face. And so once they've done that, then the parent gets a chance to complete the scene. The next one that I'll give is a scene of maybe a farm or a scene of a big city, and I'll have them draw half of it and have the other person complete the scene. And this can be really revealing to just see how we are both at different levels and different capabilities. And hopefully it'll encourage the kid to utilize their parent more or utilize that other person to help them when they can't quite describe what they're feeling. The last set of activities are taming activities. Now, these are where the child learns to bring their emotions and their thoughts under their control. Now, this is not pure control in the sense that we have control of what we feel or we have control of what we think. That would be opposite of acceptance and commitment therapy and opposite of our experience. But this is the general ideas where we want the child to understand when they're and notice when they're angry, and they're able to name that they're angry, and then be able to bring that under their control to choose their next action. So the first thing that I set up, I usually do this during the first couple sessions, is a book called Color Monster. Now, you probably have heard about this. It's really great. And they have some coloring pages that you can download as well, send home with the child so that they can put it on their refrigerator and take it home with them as a reminder. But I love this book. I've been using it for 2 years now, and I really, really, really enjoy it. It covers the 6 primary emotions in it. And I find that children really relate to the color monster because on the very first page, he's got all the different colors painted all over himself, and he's very confused about what he's feeling. And the main character in there helps him to sort it out by putting it in different containers. And at the end, you see the 6 different containers and these 6 core emotions. And so the child begins to learn what these emotions are and then how to name them and notice them. And so it's really, really helpful to begin with that. So if you don't have this book, it's probably at your local library. You can test it out and see if you like it, or you can buy it on Amazon. It's really, really good. The link will be in the description below. The 6 primary emotions are happiness, sadness, anger, calm, fear, and love. These are the ones that I pretty much stay with, even though you could add disgust in there if you'd like a 7th one. But in the book, Color Monster covers those 6. And then I utilize that with the ping pong toss, as well as other activities that I use. I help them to identify and tact those emotions. The next taming activity that I do, I usually will write on a whiteboard, or you can use a blank piece of paper. And I talk about actions. And so I'll write that word really big, and then I'll talk about the 2 parts of actions. The first part is body parts. And so I'll have that child draw as many body parts as they can. So maybe they'll draw a hand, a foot, a leg, an arm, a head, maybe a torso. And as they're doing that, we start to talk about, well, what are some things that you can do with those body parts? Oh, I can run, I can walk, I can jump, and they'll start to actually do those things and really starting to understand just there's so many things that we can do with our body parts. And so we call those actions. The second part is words. Words are what we say. So I asked the child, what are some things that you can do with your mouth and the things that you can say and how you can say them? And so if the kid's starting to draw a blank, maybe I'll start to whisper and then say, yeah, you can whisper. What about yell? Get real loud. Yeah, I can yell. And we start to list all the things you can say and how you can use your words. And then for the 2 parts of the actions, both the body parts and the words, I'll go with some things that are not so good that they can do with their body parts, the things that are not so good that they can do with their words. Maybe some things that they get in trouble for. So that's where they start to talk about stealing, hitting, kicking, yelling, cursing, swear words, those sorts of things. And so I want to make sure that they can see all those things. And then we start to talk about what it means to bring those actions under our control. Who has control of your actions? And so that's when the child can begin to learn that, well, Sean has control of his actions. Look, I can move my body parts here. Look at what I can say. And that really helps to separate whose responsibility it is for how they use their emotions. The next taming activity that I use is teaching breathing. And so I do this through a few methods. Maybe you've heard them, maybe you haven't. The first one, I'll use a Kleenex, and I'll talk about the 4-8 method. So 4 seconds of inhaling through the nose, and 8 seconds exhaling through your mouth. So I'll write it on the whiteboard, or you can write it on their blank piece of paper. And so we'll practice it, and I'll have them have the Kleenex right here, like maybe about a hand's distance from their face. And I'll have them and their parent do this together. And so that they can see the movement of their breath. So they'll inhale through the nose for 4 seconds. And as they blow out, they'll see the Kleenex move. I'll do it one more time. And this time I'll have them bring out their arm, so it's about, further from their face. And I'll see if they can move it again. Now, the Kleenex is there to help the kid visualize it and see what's happening, and also help them realize that they can control their breath. Because they're usually what they'll do is they'll inhale for 4 seconds and then exhale for 2 seconds. And it'll just be a whoosh. And what we want them to learn is how to control their breath. And what they'll realize is that by breathing, they can start to manipulate their emotions a little bit. So they can actually bring their heart rate down and their emotions down. Now, we don't get into all of that, but that's kind of what we're wanting them to learn, that their breathing affects their emotions. The next one is this 4-7-8 method. And so we'll say it's basically the same as the 4 and 8, except we're going to add a pause of holding our breath for 7 seconds. With the elevator method, what we're going to have them do is go up during the inhale. So they'll go to floor 8, hold it there for 7 seconds, and then we're going to go all the way down to level 1 for 8 seconds as we exhale. And we'll do this two or three times until they begin to get it. This one's really good because kids tend to like the elevator as a way to kind of control their breath. And so it can be, I think, helpful to learn either method. The next taming activity is with a game. This is a therapy game that you can purchase on Amazon. It's called Mad Dragon. And this is an anger management game for kids. And I think it's also helpful for parents as well. But this game is just like Uno, except it has some questions on different numbers and different cards. And it has dragons instead of, your typical wilds and stuff. And so kids really like the dragon element, and they also don't mind answering these questions. So some of the questions are, how do you deal with anger? And some of them are, what would you say to a friend who is upset? What are some things that you do when you're angry to help you cool down? So there's a lot of different questions in there, but I think that it helps them to talk about it as well as learn from parents on anger, and how that they deal with it. So it's a really good game. Definitely recommend it if you haven't heard of it. The link will be in the description below. The final taming activity that I use is called 20 questions. Now, you probably have played something like this or some variation of it like I Spy, but it's a pretty simple idea, and it could help children to think critically when it comes to things that they don't know. So instead of assuming things, like that's where kids tend to get things wrong, is maybe having a wrong assumption, like everybody's out to get me. What they can learn is to ask questions, and how questions can help them get to the answer. So I'll usually have the child start with asking questions, and I'll have the parent or myself pick an object that's in the room, something that we can see. And the kid will start to ask yes or no questions, and I usually will tally those. And I don't know if I've ever had anybody not get, I guess I have had one person not get it, but usually around 12 to 20 questions, they arrive at the answer. And as you play this game, what you'll find is there's quicker ways to get to the answer. Like you can say, is it in front of me or is it behind me? And that basically cuts the room in half. You can say, is it on the shelf? Is it to my right or to my left? And what they begin to learn is all the relational frames, and how important those are to understanding where something is. Now, when it comes to emotions, those are something that people can't see. So sometimes they can see our face, and maybe we're emitting something like as far as communications that we're upset or frustrated or sad. And so people can kind of pick up on that. But I think for children, it really is difficult to know what somebody else is feeling. And so these kind of games may seem kind of silly, but they actually teach the skills that we want them to learn so that they can begin to regulate their emotions, to begin to put a stop to things that they want to stop and to start things that they want to start. I hope you enjoyed this video and these 15 easy to teach activities. Maybe one of them will be the one that you can use with your child. If you like this video, go ahead and click the like button and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Also leave a comment if you want more videos on children, or maybe you have an activity that you find really helpful. Make sure you include that in the comments below. Remember, your journey towards more purposeful and mindful life begins with a single click.